So the electric starter wasn't working on this one, so you can kickstart it and it was working fine, but the electric starter wasn't working. So I've changed the battery. That was the first thing. So there was no voltage whatsoever on that battery, so I got a new one, and that screws, they suck. But I got the new battery and it still wasn't working. So what I've done, when you take the battery, there's a, well, the whole cover, you have the battery plate like so. Take that plate off, and then you have relay for the starter regulator, and then there is a, on LMLs there's a fuse that looks, that's the one. So it's right there. So the fuse is the temp amp fuse. You can check that fuse, but most likely the problem is not with the fuse, the problem is with that corrosion here on the second terminal. So there's a quick fix for that. You can just plug this out on both ends and then bridge it. So that's that connection. But what I've done, I've made another one. I had to use that connector so it fits into it, and I can put just a standard 10 amp blade fuse, and then that goes into the second port. But anyway, I've bridged that. Start the motor. It is starting, but because it hasn't been used for a while, that's where the electric starter is here. Because it hasn't been used for a while, bendix wasn't popping out. The starter is spinning, so you can hear it's actually working when you start the electric start, but it's not engaging with the engine. So most likely it's a bendix. So you could take that off, but to take that off, you have to take the whole the wheel off and all that, disconnect to get to the back of the starter. But there's an easier way of getting it. If you take those few bolts out to remove that cover, you'll get the access to that bendix from the outside. And that's what I'm going to do right now. Is probably not everyone's going to kill me for using impactor on the engine, but at least it's quick. Right, all the screws are out. Don't forget to connect that one back in. Just take that cover off. That's the cover for the gear change. Right, that's the bendix here. Right, so that was completely seized, so I couldn't, it was spinning but it wasn't engaging. So what I've done, if you spray a WD-40 here and then try to move it up and down, well, left and right, as you can see it starts popping out, and then eventually I got it freed up, put some extra WD-40, and I got to the point that it's spinning now. So now when I turn the ignition, I need a second hand for that now. But when I turn the ignition, start the motor, it was engaging with the engine. It was starting the engine. It wasn't really working every time when I pressed the button. So every time whenever I pressed the starter, it was every second or every third time it was starting the electric starter. Most likely it could be a brushes at the back here, but this one, it's not easy accessible. I can't access the other Vespas. They have screws here that you can take that off and you have access to the brushes. For that one I have to take the whole thing apart, but I'm not going to do that because I've noticed a few times when I started the motor it was actually working every second time, and now it's working every time. So it looks like it hasn't been used for a while, and this is why it got seized, and to the point that it just needed a little bit of movement, and WD-40. That's fixed. When I was looking at that starter, how to fix that starter, I've noticed the horn wasn't working on that. So I've got a new horn, and I've changed the battery, and then when I've changed the battery, the horn all of a sudden started working. So even with that, when you look at that now, I've cleaned it up nicely, but it was like completely rusted, so I thought that might have to be replaced. But what it turns out, it was the battery itself, because some of the elements, also electrical components like the lights, front and tail lights, and then the lights on the display, they are not working off the DC system, they're working off AC system. So you have a regulator then changes the AC, and once you have the AC powered, then it powers on those extra elements. When I've changed replaced the battery, all of a sudden the HUD stopped working because it wasn't working on the AC. So